Welcome to video 19, multiplication, decimal multiplication.
Okay, so let's take 12.6 multiplied by 4. Now we will set this out exactly the same way as we're doing column multiplication, but we're going to be very aware of the decimal places. So first things first, 12.6, and I'm going to multiply it by 4. Now that looks a little bit weird, and the reason it looks a little bit weird is because I put the 4 in this column and not here, and usually we had everything lined up on the right hand side. But don't forget that this up here is my units column, and actually 4 is a unit, the same as 12 is a 10 and a unit. And this is my tenths column, and my decimal place is there to show that these numbers are lower than 1. This is really important to help you remember that when we're multiplying by 4, we're not multiplying by 0.4. So, when we work it out, we're going to be working out exactly the same way. I need to move my decimal place down, and I need to make sure that it is in exactly the right line. So here is my decimal place. So my first multiplication that I'm going to do is 0.6 multiplied by 4. Now, just going to write that out here, just so we can have a quick look at it. Because if we were doing 4 times 6, then we know that that is nice and easy, that's 24. But we're not doing times by 6, we're actually timesing it by 0.6. Now if you've looked at the video before, the previous video, it was dividing by 10, 100 and 1000. And the same way as when we're timesing by 10 and 100,000, we're moving one column here, we can look at our decimal places to tell us how we want to move the other way. In this case, it's a 0 point number, so I have to move everything one column to the right because I'm dividing it by 10, I'm making it 10 times smaller. So our 4 times 6, so to speak, which is 24, turns into 2.4 because it's 0.6. And then I'm going to write that here. Now, if I was doing the bracket method, I would continue to write the brackets down here, and I could write 4 times 2, and I could write 4 times 10. But we're going to do it in the compiled method. So actually, this 2, I'm going to change to a small 2 underneath, so I know that I've got to add that when I get to the next part. From here on out, it's exactly the same way as when we did column multiplication a few videos ago. 4 times 2 equals 8, and I've got to add that to make it 10, and I carry it over. 4 times 1, or 4 times 10, sorry, equals 40, add the 10, 50, and it goes in there. Okay, let's try something a little bit harder. Here we've got 47 multiplied by 8.3. So we're actually looking at this slightly differently. And the way we set it out, even though in the same way as all the others, we've got to be really careful again with our columns, because here's our units column, that's our, that's our tens column, and then we have our tenths column as well. So again, 47 multiplied by 8.3. And I'll get that. Red. There we go. Timesing. I'm doing that. So, similar to when we looked at hundreds, tens and units multiplied by tens and units, and we had to do 2 sections and add them together, we've got to have to do this in here as well, because we've got our units, which is an 8, and we've got a 0.3 for our decimals. So that means I'm going to need 2 sections in the end. And then I'm going to have my answer after that. Again, making sure that my decimal places are all in the right column. I can then begin. So this first column I'm going to be doing is 0.3 multiplied by 7. If you remember from the last one, I'm thinking of it as 3 times 7, which is 21, but then because it's 0.3, I have to make it 10 times smaller. I'm moving it one column to the right. So my 21 becomes 2.1. I'll put my 1 there. And I'm going to put my little 2 underneath, so it's ready to add on. Now this one, and I'm going to write it out just up here because it looks like something we've never seen before. actually doing 40 multiplied by 0.3. Now here we've got kind of a move to the left and a move to the right. We've got our 0.3, so I'd have to move it 1 to the right to make that 10 times smaller. But here I've got a 40, and that's a move to the left. They actually cancel each other out. So 4 times 3 is 12. Now if I'm doing 4 times 0.3, I'm going to move it over. And then because it's 40, I've got to move it back again. So actually it looks like it doesn't move. I've got to add my 2 on as well, so I can't forget that. So my 12 becomes 14, and there's nothing else for me to do there. I'll put a little line through there. So, moving on to the 8. Now this is again nice and simple, same way as we've done it before, but we've got to remember, because we're doing our units column, we're writing in this section here, we're not writing in our decimal places, because these are not decimal numbers. So 8 times 7 is 56, and then 8 times 4 is 32, add my 5, is 37. Now, if I want to, I could put my 0 in there, my placeholders, and then it's a simple case of adding them together. 1 and 0 is 1, 4 add 6 is 10, 7 add 1 is 8, add the 1, 9, and 3 add 0 is 3. So here we have the answer 390.1. So 47 multiplied by 8.3 equals, or is the same as, 390.1. Okay, and finally we're going to look at a decimal multiplied by a decimal. Now actually I think this is a little bit easier than the tens and units multiplied by a decimal, because actually we're looking at the same columns. So I'm going to write this out. 4.2 multiplied by 3.6. Again, remembering that this is our units column and this is our tenths column. Again, I'm going to need my 2 areas because I've got a 3 and a 0.6 to do. And then, I'll make that a bit bolder, I'm going to have my answer after that. Now, the first calculation is the hardest calculation. Again, here I've got 0.6 multiplied by 0.2, and I'm just going to write that on the side just so we can have a little look at that. Because here normally we would be doing, in all the other calculations that we've had to go at, we've always had one whole number and one decimal number. Here we've got 2 decimal numbers. Now, there's nothing to panic about because we're just going to do the same thing twice. We know we have to make this 10 times smaller by moving it 1 column to the right. We have to do exactly the same for this one as well. So technically we're moving it twice because we're making that 10 times smaller and that 10 times smaller. So if I covered them up and did 6 times 2, we'd know that would be 12, but actually 0.6 times 2 is going to be 1.2, moving it 1 column over, and then 0.6 multiplied by 0.2 is going to be 0.12 because I've got to move it once, twice over. So here's my 12, I'm moving it once to 1.2, twice to 0.12. So actually I needed to use my hundredths column there as well. From here on out, it works exactly the same way as we have in the other couple of examples. 0.6 multiplied by 4. 6 times 4 is 24, but because I've got to move it 1 column over, is 2.4. And I've just realised what I've done. I've written it out like this. So I will need to change this slightly by just making that our small 1. So again, sorry about that. 6 times 4 is 24, but 0.6 times 4 is 2.4. Adding this on, 2.5, and then I can write my 2 straight away because no other calculations I'll need to do. Put a little line through that so that I've used it. And then moving on to here. So again, 3.0.2. 3 times 0.2. 3 times 2 is 6. Because it's 0.2, it's actually 0.6. And again, I've got to be really careful with my columns here. So 0.6 is here, so I've gone 6, moved it over 1, there's my 6. I don't need to write 0 underneath there, no reason to carry that over. And then here, 3 times 4 is 12. Can again write that straight in, no other calculations to do. And then I've got to add them together. I can use my placeholders. There's my 0 for that, 0 for that. And then it's a case of adding them together. 2 add 0 is 2. 5 add 6 is 11. Carry over. 2 add 2 is 4. Add the 1, 5. And 0 add 1 is 1. Giving me 15.12. So here, I'm going to have to squeeze it in. 4.2 multiplied by 3.6 is 15.12. Okay, it's time for you to have a go. We've got our 1 star and 2 star. We have 24 multiplied by 6.3, and we have 7.2 multiplied by 9.5. So now's your chance to pause the video, have a go at working out both of these calculations, and I'll see you in a bit for the answers. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you've had a lot of success with this. Let's see how much success we've had. Again, I've already written it out. Don't forget, we should have, first of all, put it in our tens and units, because it's 24, and then 6.3 units and tenths. Now it's a case of working them out. So, 3 times 4, but it's actually 0.3, so my 12 becomes 1.2. Carrying the 1 over, and then 0.3 times 20, we're going to have to do this juggle of both. So 3 times 2 is 6, so I'll be starting here. I've got to move it over to the right once because it's 0.3, which would go to there, but then because this is 20, I have to make it over 1 to the left, back to there, and I've got to add that 1, so that 6 becomes a 7. And then moving on to our second section. So 6 times 4 is 24, remembering that this is our units column, very important that we remember that, or everything goes wrong. And then we have 6 times 2, which is 12, add 2, 14, and then a case of adding them together. Decimal place, always in the column. Put my placeholders in. 2, add 0, which is 2. 7, add 4, which is 11, carrying over. Whoops, use that. 4, add the 1 is 5, and 1 on its own. 151.2. So hopefully you will have got 151.2. Okay, and finally, looking at our 7.2 multiplied by 9.5. And again, I've written it out ready to start. We have 7.2, 9.5, my units column, my decimals in the right place, and then not forgetting that our tenths, and actually thinking ahead, we know we're going to have 2 decimal places here, decimal multiplied by decimal, so we're actually going to need our hundredths column as well. So let's start off. 0.5 multiplied by 0.2. 5 times 2 is 10, which I'd be writing here, but then I've got my 0.5, so I have to move it 1 column over to the right because it's 10 times smaller, and under 0.2, so I've got to move it over again. So my 10 becomes 0.10. Again, technically I don't really need to write that 0 down, but actually because I started with a 10, it just makes me feel a little bit better. I've moved it on. It's not going to hurt me in the long run. I don't need to carry my 0 over because again, it's not going to need it. I don't need to add anything on. 0.5 multiplied by 7. 5 times 7 is 35. Because this is a 0.5, actually my 35 becomes 3.5. So again, I need to move this down here. 5, add the 1 is 6, and then my 3 I carry over. There's nothing else to do, so I can straight away write 3.6. Moving on to the second column. 9 times 0.2. 9 times 2 is 18. Because it's 0.2, actually becomes 1.8. Put my 8 there. 1 carry over. And then 9 times 7 is 63. Add my number 1 on, which is 64. Again, nothing to carry over. And then placeholders and simple adding. 0 at 0 is 0. 6 at 8 is 14. Carry over. 4 at 3 is 7. Add the 1, 8. And 0 at 6 is 6. 68.6. 68.40 or 68.4 because we don't actually need to use that. So 68.4. Okay, let's add that knowledge to our mind map, our number mind map. So we're going to go into this corner down here. And what did we learn? We learned units, so decimals multiplied by a unit. We also did tens and units multiplied by a decimal. And we did, multiplied by a decimal. And we did decimal multiplied by a decimal. And what knowledge did we link in there? Well, we used that knowledge from our column multiplication. We used column addition to add the answers together at the end. And here, if we look at this section, we actually had to use our multiplying by 10, 100, 1,000 and dividing by 10, 100 and 1,000. So I'm going to do a little carry off there and take it all the way around here to